This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Gary, happy Sunday. How are you today?
Happy Sunday. I'm well, Mark. How are you?
Couldn't be better. Got the trial this week, and, my trial pales in the import of another trial that starts tomorrow. In the middle of Iran and Israel, and there's all kinds of geopolitical happenings. We have in New York State Supreme Court, which is their trial court in New York State, the first former president ever to be put on trial.
Yeah, and he's not keeping quiet about it, is he?
No, he was at a rally in Pennsylvania yesterday, laying into, amongst other things. So we'll see if Gary, this is a true test for those who always want to remark on Gary's eyes and where he's looking. You have to understand what I spring on Gary, which is having him search for things as I just extemporaneously think about him, and this being one. This, for those who aren't in the weeds or are in the weeds, is what's called the hush money trial, is what the media has been calling it. And there are, it's basically 34 counts based on 34 payments that are alleged to have involved what the prosecution is going to argue is a catch and kill of stories, negative stories about then candidate Trump, who was running for president, and the theory of the prosecution. Well, let's hear something that Gary's pulled up.
Why do you believe it is important for you to testify, take the stand in this upcoming trial? And what are you watching as jury selection begins in New York?
Well, jury selection is largely luck. It depends who you get. It's very unfair that I'm having a trial there. It's very unfair that we have this judge who hates Trump and has tremendous conflict, as you know, tremendous conflict. Nobody can believe that this judge isn't recusing himself. The conflict is at a level that nobody's ever seen before. So I have that, and I have venue. We have all these things that we've asked for. They don't give us anything. It's a witch hunt that takes place in New York, and that is taking place, and it's very bad for New York, and it's very bad for the judicial system in New York. Risky for you to testify. I'm testifying. I tell the truth. I mean, all I can do is tell the truth, and the truth is that there's no case. They have no case, and again, you have to read the scholars, read all of the legal scholars. I haven't seen one legal scholar that said this is a case. And in fact, even you people said, oh, gee, that's too bad. This is the first one. All of them are scams. They're all about election interference. We have a president that doesn't know where he is. He can't speak. The whole world is collapsing. The world is on fire. They have no respect for our country anymore. And the only way he thinks he can win is by doing this, trials of Trump. We have Fawny in Atlanta, who's been so discredited now. That was a setup with her boyfriend so they could take trips and take a lot of money out. And that's something that should be dismissed. Not just the prosecutor dismissed, the case should be dismissed. Every single one of them said, look at what happened with Biden. He gets off scot-free with 50 years of documents and classified information. He gets off scot-free. And I'm still fighting that trial. The whole thing is a disgrace, and it's a disgrace to our nation.
My favorite part there is how he multiple times refers to himself in the third person, which, reminds me of someone else we might know.
Yeah, it's astonishing. There's you to unpack that. He talks about jury selection. We'll talk about it in a second. You've heard me, I can't tell you how many times, Gary, say that I never make the decision to put a client on the stand until roughly the eve of the prosecution resting, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, mind you, I can imagine what he would say if he doesn't take the stand, because I have said it myself in similar situations where I never expected the prosecution case to implode, or I never expected a witness would have admitted this, that, or the other thing. So he's got a lot of outs.
As a defense attorney, how does it strike you that he is characterizing jury selection as mostly luck? I have
where I would vehemently disagree.
Right.
With him.
I agree. I think that's why you get the medium bucks, so to speak. That's certainly where your bread and butter is. And that's why I think people come to you and people like you for your expertise.
The interesting thing is, if you want to say that it's luck in who's in the panel, because remember, what you normally have in jury selection is they will cull through a number of lists. In New York, it's the voter registration, it's driver's licenses, things of that nature. And then they send out the jury summonses. Then it filters. There's a self-filtering because not everybody responds. So that's somewhat random. Then you get people who then come in. And in a case like this, you're going to also have another layer, which I always like, which is a juror questionnaire. And I sent you some of the questions, Gary. Do you have some of the questions that this Judge Merchant is allowed to have them fill out so that the lawyers will know going into this answers to certain questions? And I'll explain why that's important.
Yes. Among the questions, do you listen to talk radio? Have you ever attended a rally or a campaign event for Donald Trump? Have you ever considered yourself a supporter of the QAnon movement? It will not ask jurors their political party or if they plan to vote for Trump in November. The attorneys can make challenges for cause that contest the jurors' eligibility. Each side will also be given 10 preemptory challenges that they can use to strike a juror without reason.
So the not asking for their political affiliation really doesn't matter. Any lawyer who's got access to a database or the registrar of voters is already generally what you do on jury selection is you'll get the list. You will then, from that list, you will do a kind of a data mining, and you will know how many times they voted, where they voted, what their registration is, whether they voted, this is a key one, in special elections. That tells you something that you can use. You can tell whether or not they've ever been on the receiving end of a lawsuit, whether they've sued themselves. You can tell whether or not they've ever been prosecuted for anything. You can find, I think this is important. I've often said, if you do not look at social media accounts, because, by the way, if you take one look, take X, for instance, I can tell you in about a minute and a half who somebody is by looking at their feed on X.
Well, it's Twitter. Elon Musk can do whatever he wants with his $200 billion, but it's still Twitter.
And if you take a look at your Twitter feed, it's pretty easy to tell who that person is. I mean, first of all, Twitter is tribal and it has that people generally weigh in. And I can tell you after just looking at somebody's feed whether that's somebody you would want. Now, you'd say, well, who do you want in a case like this? I mean, the most obvious is somebody who's a never-Trumper, anti-Trumper, somebody who's voting 7 times out of the last 6 elections. And what do I mean by that? That includes a special election. So you know that that's somebody who's politically very active. And in a case like this, that's extremely important. You've heard this story before, and I'll bring it back. But in defending Susan McDougal back in the 90s in a criminal case, one of the things that we had found out was jurors' political voting affiliations. And in that case, the ultimate, where she was acquitted on the obstruction, but on the criminal contempts, it broke down exactly track the political affiliation. So anybody who tells you there isn't a political component to these cases doesn't understand how human nature works.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to know that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it only takes a brief browsing of my Twitter to learn that I'm a podcast producer and an idiot.
Would a person know about the comments that we get? And by the way, we haven't done it since last week was the best of. I haven't seen a really, although there was one comment I kind of liked with somebody who was alerting us to the fact that this episode last week had already been played before.
Yeah, I did like I did enjoy that, especially considering that both the podcast and the YouTube feed had "best of" in all caps at the start of the title. They thought they were really giving us a heads up there that we had posted something we had already released. It was something else.
So I think that gets that person the swag. I mean, if Adam hadn't patented the term, I'd call them half-tard of the week. But
All right. All right.
That wasn't directed at you. That was adopting the moniker.
Sunday morning. Leave me alone. All right, Mark. You know what? Just for that pop quiz, where were you 6 years ago today?
Wow. I have no idea. Where was I?
Laguna Beach, California. You were attending my wedding.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. Thank you for attending.
That didn't click. Wasn't your wedding on a Saturday?
My wedding was on a Saturday, but that's how years work. 6 years later, it's a Sunday. And thank you so much for attending. It was a treat to have you there. We really both enjoyed having you, and it was very fun to have you, Mark, and Adam all in attendance, and a special day. So yeah,
Gina was there as well. I think I sat with Gina.
Yeah, Gina was there. I believe that was when you gave Gina her Wonder Woman Alex and Ani necklace.
Actually, it probably was. I think that was. In fact, I think somewhere I've got a picture of her wearing it because she does very striking resemblance to Wonder Woman, don't you think?
Hey, everybody, what's up? It's Gina Grad. And when you're searching for the perfect piece of jewelry, it can be hard to find a brand you trust. Alex and Ani has been creating meaningful jewelry for over 20 years, designing pieces that connect you with all of life's important moments. With an emphasis on value, there is truly something for everyone. They've recently launched their Everyday collection. I could not love it more. These pieces are made from stainless steel and an advanced water-resistant plating method that doesn't tarnish. It has the look of real gold. It's beautiful. I love these pieces because they feel so classic, but they have so much versatility. Alex and Ani are also featuring some gorgeous pieces that I have right here, like Black Lotus, this gorgeous Black Lotus charm necklace, and their Stay Wild pendant, and their Wings of Protection necklace that have a classic and vintage feel. See that? And of course, you can't forget their signature bangle bracelets, which I'm also wearing. And I have a lot of their stuff. I have the numerology bracelets. I have the hula dancer to commemorate a meaningful trip I took to Hawaii. From classic to bold statement pieces, Alex and Ani makes it easy to sprinkle your personality into each piece or make a truly meaningful gift for someone you care about. Meanwhile, you can take comfort in knowing that you're shopping with a socially conscious brand, as Alex and Ani has donated over $60 million to nonprofits worldwide, connecting fashion and philanthropy in an easy, fun, affordable way. Right now, Alex and Ani is offering our audience 20% off. So check their gorgeous collection out at alexandani.com and use the promo code MIDAS. That's MEIDAS at alexandani.com. Use that promo code at checkout for 20% off your order. Come and get something beautiful.
Couldn't agree more. Sorry to detract there, but you went on the half-tard route and it just it distracted me. So
6 years.
6 years.
That's wild.
Yeah, and the little boy's almost 5, which is even harder to believe. So there you go. Trump has also been pretty active on his social media about these situations. He posted something to Truth Social this morning that I will go ahead and show you. Let's see here. It's right here. Yeah. Judge John Merchan, perhaps the most highly conflicted judge in New York State history, only gave us a short period of time to read and study hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that DA Alvin Bragg illegally hid, disguised, and held back from us. Of course, and as the judge knows, we need more time than that. They could have started this fake Biden trial many years ago, not right in the middle of my campaign for president, and time would not be a problem. This is a blatant and unprecedented attack on crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, who is leading in every poll. Done in close coordination with the White House that cannot be allowed to go forward.
So this is interesting. What he's referring to is the Department of Justice disclosed a treasure trove, that's defense characterization of documents, on the eve of when this was set for trial last month. The judge did continue the matter because the prosecution had admitted that there was a delay. If you believe the prosecution, this is a state court case. They didn't have access to the documents. The feds did. That's why I said the Department of Justice. The feds had not turned this over. I believe that at the core, a lot of these documents refer to Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen was prosecuted by the feds, and they obviously did an extensive investigation. And so they had a large cache of documents that they apparently did not turn over until recently. The reason that's important is that the 34 counts that Trump is charged with all revolve around payments that Cohen was making in regards to the Stormy Daniels payment of $130,000, also in conjunction with Karen McDougal, who was another woman that's alleged to have had, or it claims to have had, an affair with ex-President Trump, and then a third gentleman who was paid, I believe, $25,000 for some other salacious things. All of these things are what are alleged that were being done in order to keep from the public the information, because that then, the prosecution theory is, would have caused a shockwave, if you will, or have affected the election, that this was election interference by Trump. His defense clearly, I think, is going to be, this had nothing to do with the election. This was something that was going on prior to that. I would imagine they will have people, it's been reported that David Pecker and others from National Enquirer may testify. That cuts both ways from the defense standpoint and the prosecution. If there was a pre-existing relationship and there were what are called catch and kill stories that predate the election, the argument is going to be from the defenses, this didn't have anything to do with the election. This was a long-standing pattern. This is somebody who's been married 3 or 4 times. And based upon that, he obviously didn't want Melania to know, and his current wife to know. And before that, he didn't want his prior wives to know. And that's, to a lot of men and women, understandable. Anybody who's gone through a divorce, in fact, I've got a client right now who's knee deep into it, and it's a knockdown, drag out, awful experience to go through for anybody, let alone somebody who's got assets, because even though in divorces it's generally no fault, it becomes a feeding frenzy for both sides in terms of salacious gossip. And I'm sure that you can obviously attribute, mind you, on an election case like this, or a campaign fraud case, you have to have a mens rea, a mental element. So one of the reasons that presumably he's going to have to testify is if they don't get statements by him into evidence in the case in chief through cross-examination that say, keep this from Melania, or I'm doing this, I don't want Melania to know, or this is why I did this, so that Melania wouldn't get wind of this, or something to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it does seem like from the reporting that this was something that they have been doing for a long time, well before he was president and well before there was any election in question. I mean, he seems to have had a longstanding relationship with that publication from, the 80s on. Well,
I believe that the principals at the National Enquirer had what's called a deferred prosecution agreement, which means that they got some kind of leniency. That'll be brought up. The defense obviously is going to talk about the fact that this is an affair that took place in 2006. And while she brought this up sometime in conjunction with the election, and that maybe that was her motivation, her being Stormy, or her lawyer at the time. She had a couple of lawyers, and that if that is the case, that still doesn't go to his mens rea. And correct. So that's probably where the battleground is going to be in terms of the end of the case. Now, the case itself, the case in chief, is, and the reason that that this is not the slam dunk that people are portraying it, is that all roads lead to Michael Cohen. And they're going to have to, there presumably will be quite the examination of Michael Cohen. And you will see the prosecution will use statements that Trump has made lauding Michael Cohen in the past and how he turned on him once he flipped. And Trump famously talked about that. The defense will say, will cite other kind of morphing or changing stories, which is typical, by the way, in federal people who are prosecuted federally. And then this is a little unusual in a state court case because generally state court prosecutions don't involve as many cooperating witnesses, if you will, as the feds do. You've heard me say before that my father's famous motto or mantra is that they never bring a federal prosecution unless they got a snitch and a wiretap. And that's not necessarily the case in a state court prosecution. But this case doesn't have or has all the earmarks of a singular or an outlier when it comes to that.
Michael Cohen has gone on to be somewhat of a media personality, I mean, mainly on the internet, but he has gone, he does, news shows as well. What will his ability to speak publicly be as this case unfolds, once we actually get to the trial? Will he be able to leave court after testifying and go on his podcast or on his YouTube channel and opine freely on what was going on that day and what he expects to come the next day? This is pure curiosity out of me. I don't even know where this came from. But as you were talking, it just occurred to me that he has a YouTube show and a podcast and, he has things that he's using to make money now. Is he going to be able to use those avenues while this trial is going on?
Yeah, well, I answer that. Find the Chris Cuomo-Geraldo exchange about this trial as well. So I'm going to play that as it. Yes, you can order witnesses to do various things, but gag orders are generally disfavored when it comes to witnesses, especially after they testify. My guess is that the prosecution has probably asked that he not go deep into what any preparation or any kind of coaching that he may receive, but he has been very vocal. He's got a podcast with Ben Meisalis where he talks about this. He's done many appearances, and he's been very vocal. I mean, there's a world in which a lot of that will make its way into the courtroom as well. I see cross-examination, and you will see that. But it's very hard to, the First Amendment is a nettlesome thing when you're a judge in a criminal case. Very hard to tell people you can't talk about this case, as we saw both federally with Trump and the D.C. case that has been basically put on hold on the January 6th. And as we've seen here in New York State Court, and the what was just put up on the screen by you, what he posted on Truth Social this morning, attacking the judge and for his conflict and everything else.
What is, I'm sorry, can you give me a little bit more on what this Geraldo clip I'm looking for is?
Geraldo had done had guest hosted for Chris Cuomo on the day that OJ died. I know because I think I made an appearance on that day. The next day he was talking with Chris Cuomo about this case. And Geraldo famously was at Fox News for many years after his CNBC show and has known Trump for forever. I think he even talks about the fact that, like Adam, he was a contestant on the
Celebrity Apprentice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the two of them, Cuomo.
Now I'm
full disclosure, it's also a client. We're talking about this case, and I think what they both agreed upon is that this prosecution, even though it was the first of the 4 indictments, and it's going on trial first, I think a lot of people had kind of mentally put this one on hold, given what was the subsequent Georgia indictment, the January 6th indictment, and the classified documents indictment down in Florida.
All right. Well, I think we're going to have to go ahead and review that next week. I'm having trouble figuring this out while we're live recording here. So I think we will go ahead and put a pin in it, and we'll take a look at that footage next week. Mark, thank you so much for finding some time on a Sunday, and thank you so much for joining me on my anniversary as you did on the night we were married. We appreciate it.
I love it. Into another 60 years, Gary. Happy anniversary.
Amen. Thank you, sir. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.